clear of the closing doors, please.
All right, here we go. Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to SST on Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, and on YouTube. You can follow us on socials at Subway Sports Talk. That's Instagram. That's TikTok. That's YouTube. That's Twitter. That's everywhere you're on socials, everywhere you listen to your podcast app. Hit us up, subscribe, rate, review. Because if you listen to this podcast with our special guest today, how could you not enjoy the hell out of it? Because Cody O'Connor is here. Cody O, what is up, my dude?
Pete, I could think of plenty of ways that somebody would not enjoy the hell out of me in their ears on their way to work or working out. But
give me your top 3 reasons why they wouldn't enjoy you right now. Go.
Oh, boy. Off the top of my head, if they're watching on YouTube, there's reason number 1. Unless they like my Devil's hat. But, I don't know. People probably, you know what, Pete? I got none. I'm fucking great. And that's why we're here.
There we go. That's what I like to hear. Cody O'Connor's here. We're going to talk New York Knicks and NBA because those two things are going hand in hand right now. And we can go full big picture on where the Knicks live currently in the NBA and then more, micro view of what's happening with the New York Knicks specifically right now on their court, not macro of what's happening around them in the NBA. But both conversations are important. And I'm going to stand on that, and you'll hear why in just a minute. We're also going to talk just a quick hitter on baseball at the end of this episode here. Maybe a quick thought on what's going on with the New York Mets. And how about stay tuned for a future bet from both Cody O'Connor and myself. So with that being said, it's time to talk about the New York Knicks, Cody O'Connor. And I don't know how many times I need to tweet this. I don't know how many times I need to say this. The New York Knicks season is not over. The New York Knicks have 25 games left. The New York Knicks are not all of a sudden the 8th best team in the Eastern Conference. They are still the 3rd best team in the East. They are still a top 5 or 6 team in the NBA. And the way Knicks fans specifically, I'm not attacking the country and the national media members, we can maybe get to them later. But New York Knicks fans specifically are reacting to this past weekend is ridiculous to me. Did I hate watching those games? Absolutely. Did I feel like the Knicks were outmatched? Absolutely. Do they have real concerns? We'll get to those. But let's not pretend that the season ends today. Let's not pretend they're facing Boston tomorrow in a 7-game series. It's not how it works. This team is really good still. Can we all relax? Can we all still look at what's possible for this team and what has always been realistic for this team? I don't know what's worse. The fact that people thought this was a championship team or the fact that they think the season ended on Sunday. So Cody O'Connor, I think you get my gist now. And obviously we'll get into more detail. Can you tell me if I am being a softy homer, anti-whiner, or now I'm just finding my own lane to whine? I don't know how you want to frame it. But do you think that I'm keeping my head on leveled here, or do you think I'm defending a team that does not deserve defending right now?
If I went the other way to say that you're wrong, I'd be a little hypocritical, but to what I've been saying all year and what I still think about this team. I don't want to sound tone deaf or like it meant nothing to get blown out by Boston again in a marquee matchup. But it's February and there's so much time for this to look different for the Knicks. And Boston's getting up for them. Boston knows that they could play them, but they're getting up because that's a real team that they think is a contender, and they should think that. And I think there's only 3 in the East, and I think the Knicks are one of them, and they probably are the 3rd contender. I made that list a couple weeks ago, and I stand by it to this day. It's concerning to watch the Knicks get trounced. Yes, they had a little bit of a push and a comeback, but the Celtics kind of kept them at bay for the most part.
For sure.
But it's February, and it will look different for the Knicks. And another thing I've talked about all year with them, and I get it's a health bet, and I understand if there's a concern, but the point for the Knicks is that it's always going to be about the playoffs with this type of team. Mm-hmm. What they do in the regular season will matter some nights, and getting them to gel together and learn how to play together is going to matter for a newer team. But there's bumps along the road, without any question. It started a little bumpy, then it got great. And then it got a little bumpy again, and that's the NBA season, especially for a newer team. But what's going to matter for them is what does their 8 or 9 guys look like come playoff time? And is that set? Is it locked in? And does that rotation make sense? Does that rotation give you confidence going up against Cleveland and Boston? That should be the conversation and what your focus should always be. Not letting a Sunday game where a lot of eyes are on it tell you, it's over here in February, season's done. It's just not the case. It's tough to watch. Again, you don't want to see it, but it's far from over.
It was the perfect storm, post All-Star break, overtime game to Chicago. You sneak out a win. Dominated by Cleveland, dominated by Boston. It was the perfect storm for Knicks fans. And granted, I think a lot of Knicks fans had reasonable concerns going into that weekend, knowing how difficult it was going to be to play Cleveland off a back-to-back and then play Boston on a Sunday afternoon in Boston. The Knicks don't do great in afternoon games generally, and especially up in Boston, that's not going to help the cause, right? So it was a perfect storm, and I feel like I'm almost putting my neck out on the line even more by taking the stance that I'm taking, because it is likely they lose to Boston in a series. They're not going to be favored to win, and they never were going to be favored to win. So if the Knicks beat Boston on Sunday, if somehow they didn't give up, those easy 4 baskets right to start the game, which put them in a hole and led to a chain of events that was very negative for the Knicks team. If they didn't do that and they stayed in it and they somehow won that game, are we taking the Knicks as favored over Boston in a series? Absolutely not. That would be overreaction to the other side. That would be even more detrimental to the expectations of Knicks fans, in my opinion. The Boston Celtics are better. The East runs through them. The Cleveland one sucks because they ran us out the gym. We get Cleveland again. The Knicks play Cleveland again. It's not over there. Okay? And to me, and I know there's Knicks fans listening to this right now, saying that I'm, just spewing crap for the team, being positive for no reason. This team's cooked. I can see the text from my boy Chris Muley, if he didn't text it already at this point in the podcast, saying, yo, you're shot. The Knicks are cooked, bro. And he's a Knicks fan, and he's a good fan. But he's saying it. Guess what? The Knicks play Cleveland again April 2nd. Got a whole month of basketball before you get to see Cleveland again. And guess what? They see Boston again in April 8th. Another whole month before you get to see Boston again. You see Cleveland even one more time, second to last game of the year. The season's not over, Cody. Now, the concerns are concerning. I get it, and we'll get into that here. But this idea to me that you go from the clear-cut third best team in the East to now all of a sudden people are nervous about the Pistons. And you're talking to the biggest Cade Cunningham fan that you probably know. I love Cade. I love what the Pistons have been doing. We went from being the clear-cut third best team to we can't beat the Pistons in a series. We're going to struggle in the first round now. That's not how this works, man. And maybe I'm overreacting to their overreaction, but that's how I've felt. Because I was equally as upset and equally as nervous after those losses this weekend, Cody. But how could you go from being the clear-cut third best team to being nervous about the Hawks in the first round? To being nervous about the Orlando Magic in the first round? All of a sudden the Pacers are more trustworthy than the Knicks? I don't get it. It doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make any sense.
And that's really what my question was going to be is as a Knicks fan, are you sitting here telling me that now you think that we're going to lose in round 1 to Detroit? Because besides that, nothing else has changed. They are going to go into a series with Boston as an underdog. And they're going to go into a series against Cleveland, if that's who they end up seeing, as an underdog. Cleveland has got the best record in the NBA. They're going to have home court advantage. They're going to be a favorite in that series. There's no question about it. It was always going to be an uphill climb. Whether you thought it was going to be Boston before the season, maybe we didn't see Cleveland being this. Nobody probably saw this. But you might have thought Milwaukee. Maybe you thought Philly going into the year. Or Indiana was going to repeat success. Or maybe you thought Jimmy Butler would be on Miami. I don't know. But regardless, there was always going to be a battle in the East. So the reaction to this game, it's not surprising. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm shocked to see fans doing this, especially New York fans, especially New York fans who represent the orange and blue and haven't really seen success. I get it. It's hard to kind of handle the expectations. I'm going to learn that as a Mets fan. I'm ready for the sky to be falling in May and that to happen when Pat famously tweets that Soto's hitting 250 and has a
Right.
740 OPS. And like everyone's like, 700 million. But that's all going to come with it. There's, like I said, there's going to be the bumps in the road. So my thought has been all season, and it will not change because of a game against Boston. It will not change because of how they played against LA or a couple of bumps. Like I said, my thought has always been when this team is healthy, and if they can be, their 8-man rotation is as good as anyone. They are going to be much, much more flexible. I know you're going to give me some concerns. And I think Mitch Robinson coming back, which now it's not like, oh, it's on the horizon or it's a couple months. It's like
It's next week.
Yeah, like it's coming. So we're going to be able to get to see this. And their 8-man rotation with him, and now you're saying Precious, Campaign, Landry Shamet are kind of the 8th man, and we're kind of sharing the workload of like who takes those couple minutes. When you've got McBride and maybe Mitch or maybe Josh Hart, whatever you decide to do with the rotation as your first 2 off the bench, it's entirely different. And in the playoffs, 7 and 8 guys, that's all that really matters. So that's where I've been. That's where my kind of idea of what they can be lies is would I envision this starting 5 plus 3 guys off the bench to be in the playoffs? To me, that's always made sense, and it always has stacked up against the rest of the East.
And those are such huge points. I think we spoke a lot about earlier in the year when the Jericho Sims minutes were really ugly before Precious came back. And I said, you have to think about how the math works here. And the math will continue to math in many ways. And that'll be part of one of my concerns here. But you looked at Jericho Sims, for the year being a pretty big time negative. He was negative 3.6 box plus minus over his 39 games so far this year. Precious Achiuwa hasn't been that great. He's had some really good games, but he hasn't been spectacular. His box plus minus is a -1. That's still 2.6 points better than what you had before on a per game basis. Like that's a big difference, right? So now you add Mitch into the equation and that math can just math a little bit more, right? So this defensive number that we keep seeing, they're the 30th ranked defensive rating over the course of last, 10 or 15 games, whatever the number was. That's for sure bad and concerning. And again, we're going to get to the concerns. But the math changes when Miles McBride goes from your 6th man to your 7th man. And your 7th man in Campaign or Precious or whoever it is goes to your 8th man. It's a big difference. And I know it's a lot of ask for Mitchell Robinson. And I think people who are nervous about Mitch and saying, like, how can you trust this person who's never available to be that available for you, to be the math changer for you? And that's a fair concern. But right now, we expect him to be healthy. And we've seen him in playoff series make a big impact. So it's something that you have kind of a foot in both sides on and say, on one hand, we shouldn't fully expect him to be available 100% of the time. But on the other hand, when he's available, we should expect him to do well. So both, as I just smacked my mic out of the way, both of those things are true, right? So to me, that's a really important part of it. And then on top of that, we know the 0-7 against the Thunder, Cavs, and Boston. How do they do against the rest of the good teams in the league, Cody? Do you have an idea off the top of your head? Like, how do you think they do against the Denvers, the Memphises, the Houstons, and even like the Milwaukees of the world?
I watched them beat all of them. And as far as those top 3, I get it, but you have no concern with Oklahoma City unless you're in the NBA Finals, and then that's only the chance that they make it there. So that stuff really shouldn't matter that much. But since we want to play the game of adding them into the top 3 to make the Knicks look bad, we have to play the same game of, all right, well, how do they do against the next rank of contenders? I watched them beat Memphis. I watched them put 40-plus on Houston in the fourth quarter, one of the best defensive teams in the league. I watched them beat Milwaukee and take it to Denver a couple times to a point where they had Jokic in the postgame saying, yeah, this is one of the top 5 teams in the league and a legit contender. So I'm going to choose to listen to Nikola Jokic, maybe the smartest basketball mind in the world, over Twitter.
Right. 7-2 against those teams.
Good date. That's my birthday.
How about that? 7-2 against the other top teams in the league. So again, my concern is not to sit here and tell you the Knicks actually are the number 3 contender for the Eastern Conference. My concern is not to tell you that they still are the 4th or 5th favorite to win the NBA Finals. My concern is to tell you they didn't get jumped by 8 teams in the last weekend. So take that vernacular and don't talk to me with it. I don't want to hear it. It doesn't make sense to me, and I don't think it's based in reality. We are nervous as a collective that the Celtics, Cavs, and Thunder are better than the Knicks. Let me tell you something. They're better than the Knicks. Nothing's changed. Go ahead. Sorry. That was it for now.
They are, and they have been. And I was telling you before, like, not to kind of Bill Simmons this conversation into my own team, but as I watched Oklahoma City blow a lead last night, and it was a bad loss. They had a 24-point fourth quarter lead.
Like you shouldn't lose that game if you're
those games don't happen very often. Boston blew one of them last year. I saw the numbers today. They blew like a 30-point lead in a game last year, while people are in the the Thunder Twitter fear are, oh, championship teams don't blow that type of lead and this, that, and the third. And it wasn't good. I watched the whole game, but it happened. It was a 4-minute stretch of bad basketball to a point where now there's people like, I don't think this team can win it all, when just 2 days ago they could win it all. And they reacted to 4 minutes of basketball where a perfect storm has to happen for that run. A perfect storm happened. Oklahoma City couldn't hit shots. Minnesota couldn't miss. Bad turnovers at times. Unlucky with the basketball. I didn't think there was great coaching, which probably the first time I've said since Mark Dagnall's been, the guy here. But it all kind of came together. But those 4 minutes are not going to dictate whether this team can win a championship or not. When we're watching them play playoff basketball in April, May, and June, we're not going to be like, you know what? It's that game in February that really did it. And to me, Pete, I'm looking at that game last night like, good, get this out of the way. I don't think that Oklahoma City gets better because they win that game by 20. But I think there's a world that this young team, who is still young, gets better because they did blow that game and they see that, hey, we can't take the foot off the gas. Mark Dagnall has to be a little bit better in managing those situations. And you take it and you learn from it because it is a long season. And the same goes for the Knicks. It's a long season. And you're not going to not be able to beat Boston because you couldn't beat them in February. It's about how you're playing in April, May, and June.
And to play the spin zone even one more time, based off what you just said with Oklahoma City, of saying like a little bit of a wake-up call, right? They've just been beating everybody. Their record this year speaks for itself. Cleveland's kind of in the same boat. When you've lost hardly double-digit numbers of games at this point in the season, you've been ridiculous, right? Maybe a little slip here. Maybe you finally get someone's best punch there, and you lose a couple ones. Like 10 losses and 11 losses for Cleveland and OKC is crazy impressive. For the New York Knicks, however, could you spin zone it in that similar fashion? The Knicks got a wake-up call again and again on Friday and Sunday against Cleveland and Boston. They now realize, just like we all realize, that they can't do what they just did. They can't start that slow because that's been the big crux for this team. Cat and Brunson weren't hitting shots early, and they gave up easy buckets. And that trifecta right there of no good Brunson, no good Cat, bad defense to start, you're cooked. You can have your amazing run in the third quarter, and it doesn't matter because by the time you get back to within 4 points, it's too late. You're cooked. And I thought what Jalen Brunson said was so important to hear from me after that game. He goes, in that third quarter, we all just kind of stopped caring and just getting after it. Like we realized that we had to play balls to the wall and stop worrying about every specific, possession and just play hard and go for it. Basically, what he was saying was we full sent in that third quarter. And we realized that it takes that from us sometimes. And that's a good thing to realize. Now, of course, you can say you shouldn't lose minor details and things of that nature, of course, right? Like he's not saying that they're going to forget about the little stuff. He's just saying they had to play balls to the wall and they felt that and they did it. And they have to do that more often. To me, that's a massive thing to realize. So am I going to say this is a turning point for the Knicks that's going to lead them to glory? Not necessarily. But the fact that Jalen Brunson is sitting there saying, yeah, what we did to start that game was not even close to good enough. We have to be better more often. We have to play aggressive more often. That's all positive. That's all wins. And now on the Tom Thibodeau front, you know what? Actually, let's go to the concerns, Cody. Let me do my concerns for you.
Please.
So I've been thinking a lot about this over the past couple days with the New York Knicks and the concerns. Because with all the stuff that I'm telling people right now for the beginning portion of this podcast, saying how I think there's still hope in this season, that the season's not over yet, that they didn't drop from the 4th power ranked team to the 12th power ranked team is all true. But it's also true, and I'm not going to sit here and spew garbage to you without realizing the truth as well, that there are concerns with what's happening with the New York Knicks, all in conjunction with facing the best of the best, teams that we didn't think the Knicks were better than already, but still very important concerns. So I'm going to rank five concerns for you right now, Cody, and they're in order, but I'm open to hearing your thoughts and maybe move them around. So number 5, I'm going with Coach Thibodeau. Coach Tibbs has been catching hit after hit after hit this whole weekend, all day Monday, all day Tuesday. The minutes police have never been on higher alert. The injury police have never been on higher alert. The rotation police are right in the mix with those guys. And people are now saying that Tom Thibodeau can't coach this team. I'm not jumping to that conclusion. That's why I'm ranking this 5th. Am I still slightly concerned? Do I still have nits to pick with Tom Thibodeau? Absolutely. I think when you see Cam Payne and Landry Shamet check in and the pace completely changes, Tom Thibodeau should be noting that and encouraging more of his players to play like that. So I have nits to pick with Coach Thibodeau, but I don't think he can't coach this team. I don't think he's not the guy who can turn this defense to being much better. So my concerns with Coach Tibbs for this year, because he's not going anywhere this year, let's be real. Even if he goes anywhere next year, I'd be kind of shocked, to be honest, too. But I'm not that concerned with Coach Thibodeau. Do you have thoughts?
I have next to zero concerns with him. I mean, there are those times like when Cat comes back in off the ankle injury, right? Mm-hmm. And they're down 16, 18 points with 2 minutes. You're like, what? Like, I think Bill Simmons said it was like irresponsible. And I kind of agree with him there. It just doesn't make sense, especially, again, off the injury and the situation. But I think Thibodeau is the guy for this team. I think he's gotten the most out of so many guys. He's maximized so many guys, and he's been able to do that. They clearly like him. They play for him. You could see the off the court stuff, just like in on the podcast or in different clips, that this team genuinely likes each other. They gel together, and it does start with your coach. I don't have any Tibbs concerns as far as if they fall short, him being on the list of where I call, what the cause was. I don't know that he'll even be on it very high.
Okay. Number 4, and this one is kind of a twofer, if you will, because I don't like how I frame it, but it's necessary to frame it this way. Did you see the clip by chance of Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson talking on their podcast about who's faster and the pace in which they play? I
did see that. They're talking about athleticism and Josh saying at the end, right, that they're the slowest paced team in the league or something.
Because of Jalen Brunson, right? So my number 4 for this concern list is Jalen Brunson / pace. I am concerned with how this team plays sometimes. I look at a team that nets out similarly to the New York Knicks. And when I say nets out, I mean really strong offense, pretty weak defense. What do those teams normally do? They push the pace and push variance, right? When you see the Indiana Pacers, who have some decent defensive talent on their team, but they're not a great defensive rating team, it's because they play extremely free, extremely fast, and basically trust their guys to get going towards the basket and rip shots as much as possible. And I'm not saying the Knicks should play exactly like the Indiana Pacers, but when this team is playing fast, they're better. It, A, doesn't allow the opponent's defense to get set as frequently. It, B, creates more opportunities for the others to score easy baskets. And C, Jalen Brunson, in my opinion, is more effective when he is pushing pace and pushing the ball. He's one of these players that can push the pace and can move the ball, but a lot of times reverts back to that, I'm going to find my spot and get my bucket right here, right now. And he needs to do that. That's important for him to do that for this basketball team. However, as a collective, it's more important for the pace to be quicker and for Jalen Brunson to play fast and get people involved than it is for him to all the time get to his spots and get his shots.
Yeah, it's almost a general statement. I think when teams are going well, they are playing with that pace. Like if Oklahoma City can get out in transition, I just relate it back because that's who I watch the most. But when they're out in transition, they're usually a nightmare to stop. They're really tough. when things slow down, they get in the half court, the pace slows down, it's tougher to score. It's usually how it goes anyway. But the Knicks do play at that style, at that pace. But in the same breath, I still think with the options they have on the floor when healthy, that they should be able to score in bunches, even if it's in the half court. And I think a lot of times that ball starts to stick, and that's when it doesn't go well. Is when the ball stops moving and the off ball stops moving. Like there's no action around, there's no backdoor cutting and screens being set. But they're at their best when there's so much constant pressure and movement that it's interesting. Like when you say pace, typically it's like, I think of like the Suns with Steve Nash, right? They're like 6 seconds or less Steve Nash Suns. But we're not saying that that's what the Knicks need to be. But it needs to be some urgency to get into the offense. Like taking the ball up, taking 8 seconds, and then taking 6 more seconds to initiate anything is when you end up with a step back 3 or a contested long 2 or just a heave at the end of the clock. And that is an issue that all teams run into. But that is what happens when you're struggling, is that ball seems to stick just a little bit more and the movement slows down. And again, it doesn't mean you have to get the ball up with double digits left on the shot clock. I think what we're both saying, at least what I'm thinking, is you need to start initiating your offense sooner, quicker, get into the action. Because if your first look doesn't work with 14 seconds left, you've got enough time to make something else happen. And they have enough scorers that, all right, if it gets to 6 seconds left, they have 2 or 3 guys that can go and create for yourself, but they shouldn't have to do that constantly.
And that's exactly right? When I'm saying pace, I don't mean they have to be in transition all game, but they have to be quicker and more deliberate with what they're doing in the half court as well. Because when you see the Knicks, if you just think about the Knicks clicking on all cylinders this year, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about OG Anunoby cutting and getting wide open dunks. You're thinking about when Mikhail's actually hitting shots, he's catch and shoot in an instant. Josh Hart is cutting to the basket and getting easy layups and dunks. Miles McBride is shooting off the catch and letting it rip. And Karl-Anthony Towns is picking, popping, and cutting like a monster. And that's all I just said. All those things that are hugely positive to this team and to this offense have nothing to do with Jalen Brunson scoring. Jalen Brunson scoring like that, the way he does, is your floor. That's your floor. To reach your ceiling, you need to get all those other guys positively moving. And that's why when Cam Payne comes in the game, there's a breath of fresh air. When I'm watching, it's like, all right, this guy might go ahead and miss the next 3 shots that he's going to take in 2 minutes. He might make all 3. Both outcomes to me push the pace of this team to act fast on offense, and it's refreshing to watch. So I'm not trying to crap on Jalen Brunson. He's been insane this year. He's an all-NBA player. He's just a great player all around. But the style that he inspires, to me, is so important to this team. It's why I've been hyping up that he's having a career year in assist totals. He's averaging 7.5. That's a career high for him. That's huge. The Knicks are better when he's doing that, in my opinion. So number 3,
Pete, I'm just to say, I when you said, what do you envision? I envision that second quarter they played against Oklahoma City in that first meeting, or that fourth quarter against Houston. It's not like we haven't seen it before. And we've seen it for December. We saw it for like a month at a time. Yeah. So it's there. It just has to be brought back. And that's why I'm like, chill out, because there's enough time to get back to the Knicks basketball that made you so happy, excited, and looking forward to the playoffs.
So number 3, I'm going to keep this one simple. It's Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges is too comfortable being the 4th or 5th option on the court. And he doesn't have to be, nor should he be, the first option on the court. But he has to assert himself like he's the number 2 at all times. And he's not the number 2. But he has to assert himself like he is. He is too passive. He is not aggressive. Because when he is aggressive and he is playing fast and he is getting up shots, it's positive to this team. This is a guy, if I was Coach Thibodeau, I'm saying, oh, Mikal, you're taking 14, 15 shots a game. I need 18 shots a game from you. And is he going to get that every game? Absolutely not. It's not in the math, right? When you got Cat taking 17 or 18, Brunson taking 18 or 19, he's not going to get to 18 or 19 every game, but he has to go into every game thinking he's taking 18 shots. He has to try to be a 20-point scorer. He does a great job at the little things, and they constantly go undervalued. I get it. He's fighting over screens like a maniac on defense. He still has bad defensive metrics despite his efforts and his talent on defense, but that's not really his fault. It's more the position and what's around him right now. But the shooting is there. The shooting is there for him. He's at 36%. He's taking 6 threes a game. I want to see 8. I want to see 8 threes a game. I want to see him get to the rim. I want to see the elbow fadeaway that he takes more often. He needs to be assertive, because when he is assertive, the Knicks are better. And I don't know how you get that through a guy who just plays a team style ball at all times. Like, you don't necessarily need Brooklyn Nets McHale, but you also don't need fifth man McHale. You need him to know he is the third best player on this team, because he acts like the fifth way too often.
I'll be honest, Pete. I think this is my number one concern. And I say number one because I think he is what unlocks this team. I think he is the absolute X factor and the difference maker in whether the Knicks are a second round exit, or a team that's competing with Boston and Cleveland with a chance to go to the title. Because he's brought there because he's the third guy. He's brought there on a night where Cat or Brunson doesn't have it to be able to give you 25. That's what he can do. He's capable of that. He's there on a night where Brunson and Cat have it to still give you a steady 18 to 20. And he does typically do it efficiently. I do love his style. And the reason I've backed this trade from the start and still continue to do so, even though he's really trying his best to make it look bad, it's because he is that ultimate team guy who doesn't need the ball, that fits in seamlessly, that plays defense so well, but he's also supposed to be 18 to 20 a night. And he has to be aggressive in that. And he plays like it's almost like he learned this from Kevin Durant, which is ironic because they didn't play together. The trade was for one another. But right. Kevin Durant has that same type of attitude where he's just going to keep the ball moving if it's not there. He doesn't force too often. He rarely puts himself in a spot where he's taking like a contested 2 or a really bad 3 or something. And Bridges is similar. Obviously, the talent level is different. But the point is he's similar in the sense like he doesn't push that boundary, but sometimes he just has to. And it's going to open everything up. And then you've got OG on the night where he's not working. And yes, all right, now OG can step up for the 15. But when the Knicks were rolling well, they had 5 starters in double digits. They had 4 or 5 guys putting up 15 plus a night. And when I saw them, again, I'm going to revert back to that quarter against Oklahoma City because it was some damn good basketball, some of the best I've seen anyone play all year. The nightmare to watch against them and to try to stop them was you can't get off of or lay off anybody. Every single guy is a legit option to score. And when the ball moves like that, there's no breaks on defense. So Bridges is my biggest concern because I think he is the biggest difference of what they can be. I think he's their number one X factor to me.
So when Mikal Bridges scores more than 20 points, so 21 points or higher, the New York Knicks are 14-3.
Thank God that worked. Whew, I was afraid to be like 7-8.
14-3. If you drop down to just 20 points plus, they're actually weirdly when he scores exactly 20, they're 0-3. So they're 14-6.
Okay. Good.
When he
good
scores
number.
exactly 20, which is kind of weird. But when he goes over 20 points, they're a really good freaking team. And the same concept, when he takes 18 shots or more, they are not 1, 2, 3. They're 9-3. So he needs to be that guy. Like, he needs to be aggressive. They're better when he's aggressive. It's very simple, honestly. It's not even a question mark to me. When he's more active offensively, they're a better team. And he needs to get that through his head. And it's probably on Tibbs and on his teammates to be like, yo, freaking shoot. Right? Like, remember when he had that stretch where he started shooting the ball well and Josh Hart was like, yeah, y'all were worried. We weren't worried. We knew this was him, blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, keep encouraging him. Like, you ever play, I'm going to do this is the 4th Bill Simmons reference. You ever play pickup with a guy who's like kind of tentative, but like, you know, he can kind of shoot, but he doesn't really have a ton of other skills. So he's a little tentative, right? It's like, dude, I'm passing you the ball, rip it right away. Like, rip it. And then all of a sudden he hits 2 or 3 and you're like, that was huge for us. Boom. You need some confidence, brother. Boom. Like, that's what he needs to have in his bag is Mikal just needs the confidence to attack. So I stand on that with you.
It's like sometimes the worst thing you can do is pass up a good shot because sometimes you try to turn good into great, but sometimes a good shot turns into no shot, turnover, or an awful take. So yeah, he can also initiate offense too. Like, he is a real like a complete type of a basketball player. He could do so many things well. He's not going to be unbelievable at almost anything. He could maybe shoot the three ball pretty damn well, but he's not like the best at anything, but he's really good at a lot of things. So he can initiate. He doesn't always have to maybe put it up, but he has to be more aggressive. He has to be a threat offensively. The defense has to feel the presence of Mikal Bridges more.
Yeah, they're also 7-2 when he takes double-digit threes. Like this is who you have to be. All these numbers make sense to me, right? Like they're good when you shoot. So shoot. All right, number 2. It's depth, and I'm starting to feel like 2 and 1 are like mean the same thing kind of. But for 2, it's depth, and it's almost a weird conversation of like, do I think the depth is bad? I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that the depth doesn't play enough as part of it too. You can be number 1 guy right now because we're going to go Oklahoma City Thunder again. How many games does it feel like Aaron Wiggins is the X factor for the Oklahoma City Thunder? Doesn't it feel like twice a week he's the X factor?
Well, he's the savior of basketball. I don't know if you've seen that joke running around on Twitter. Chet actually brought it up in a post game, but
I saw that.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's been a couple nights, especially recently, he's really been on a great stretch where you'd be like, dude, without him, I don't know what they'd have looked like tonight.
Right. Peyton Pritchard, same concept. Max Strus for Cleveland. Like he comes in and just fucking rips and makes it happen. And Strus isn't like that special, but like the point stands. Like you see all these teams across the league. You see Nickeil Alexander-Walker against the Thunder for the Minnesota the other day. Comes in the fourth quarter and just goes nuclear. Like the Knicks don't give their depth a chance to even do that. Because Cam Payne comes in and scores 9 points in 45 seconds, and then he doesn't play again. And I get that you don't trust him that much on defense, but that spark means something. And I think the depth is a concern because it just comes down to who will Thibodeau trust. So 5-2 almost can be 1 because I don't mind the actual pieces. It's just that they don't play enough and they don't get enough burn to actually make it happen.
Yeah, that depth in the regular season, it matters a ton. It's
Right.
why I have, since the very beginning of the year, you could go back, what I've called Oklahoma City is the regular season juggernaut because they have 12 guys legitimately that could come in and give you real serious good minutes when they're healthy. And on nights like back-to-backs and when you're playing through the grind of a schedule, that matters a ton, right? Because you have to give breaks at times to other guys. In the playoffs, it'll matter in some ways, but then again, you're really only playing 8 to 9 guys. So there's some points where it's like, we need to get a few minutes off of this guy. We need to take the workload off a lot. And the fear is that they are just one injury away from like, you're like, oh God, there's no way to replace this person or this player. But depending on who it is, every team can say that. So the depth, it's really tricky with the Knicks because I still, again, my confidence in them comes from the 8 to 9 man rotation that you'll see in the playoffs. But the fear is that you're putting so much stock in just one guy coming back in Mitch Robinson and how that changes so much. And typically a championship team, you don't have that much in just one guy. Like just, again, thinking of Boston last year, they've had an unhealthy Porzingis. He barely played in the finals. He almost didn't play in the finals. But they were able to get over that. With the Knicks, I don't think that they can get over not having Mitch in the playoffs, say.
Right. And like you think about the Boston Celtics, Peyton Pritchard's another guy. It's like you find Peyton Pritchard on the right night. You're like, oh, this guy's an all-star, right? Like he shoots what? Like he must shoot like 70% from 3. That's what it feels like for Peyton Pritchard sometimes. I mean, there was a game a couple weeks ago. I put a same game parlay in for the Celtics and it was like, your classics like Tatum to get, X amount of point, rebound, assist and Porzingis to hit a few threes or whatever it was. And I looked through it. I'm like, the Celtics won by like 18. The hell happened? No one did well. And I was like, Pritchard had 30. I'm like, what happened? Pritchard had 30. Like Knicks bench pieces don't have a chance to score 30. It's not even in the ether for them because they don't play enough. And that kind of sucks.
They literally don't have the shot attempts to get to that number.
They literally don't have the space in the game to do so. All right. That brings me to number 1. And this should be, in my opinion, the number 1 concern for the Knicks across the board. And it's specifically interior defense. It is their rim protection and their shot altercations all down low, all about what's happening in the paint against the Knicks. Because right now, Everyone points to the 3-point shooting against the Knicks, and I agree that that's a problem, but it's because the interior defense sucks. That's why. Their perimeter defense is not bad. They just screw themselves by overcommitting to try to make up for bad interior defense. And that is why I'm so high on the Mitchell Robinson return, because he by himself can protect the rim. He is somebody who will alter shots, block shots, eat up a few fouls, and take away so much pressure from Karl Anthony Towns trying to be a center that he's not. OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Deuce McBride. Pretty much everyone across the league would agree that they're all good defenders or great defenders. So why does this defense suck? Because they're constantly chasing to help protect the rim, which leads to open 3-point shooters or a kick to the outside and then an overextension and a wide open layup. That is the crux of their defensive issues. It is not a mistake when we look at what Tom Thibodeau's defensive rankings have been with the New York Knicks. They've been really good every year. It's because Mitchell Robinson's been there. It's because Isaiah Hartenstein was there. These guys changed the math so much on defense. It can't be overlooked. People say, what's wrong with the 3-point defense? It's because they can't protect the rim. And to me, Precious Achiuwa, he's a nice piece. He's okay. He's not a great interior defender. He's athletic, so he makes it look like he is sometimes, but he's not great at it. Mitchell Robinson's great at it. Again, a huge ask for somebody who hasn't played yet this year, but that math can change entirely if he's protecting the rim and allows the perimeter defenders to defend the perimeter.
The perimeter defenders, which are a strength of this team. Let's not forget what Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Josh Hart are. They're all defensive team, first, second, third team type of guys. And Karl Anthony Towns, as amazing as he is offensively, as much as I'll defend the trade, and I'll continue to do so, they are better because they have him. He's not a rim protector. That's not who he is. He's an excellent rebounder, which is very, very important. Like he's a good presence to have on that side of the ball, but he needs a guy to play alongside of him to help him. That's why you saw the Timberwolves take off last year, having him and Rudy Gobert. As much as I may not like the guy, the one thing you always say about him is how good he is as a rim protector, how often he alters shots, and he is able to keep those outside defenders outside. Because what is the first thing not the first thing, but what is something you're so often hear and you're taught when you play basketball? Drive and kick. Break down the defense, they converge on you, you kick it out to an open shooter, they take the shot, or they're able to, have a defender off balance and initiate something else. You drive and kick, you break the defense down, and you find who's out there. If you're not breaking the defense down, or if you have a legit rim protector there, now the guards aren't all converging on that. The perimeter guys are able to stay where they are or close enough to, and make those jump shots just that much more difficult, or those passing lanes get cut off. So Mitch changes everything for this team, and it's funny because it's just like all of these almost come together except for Mikal Bridges, maybe 5-2-1. Mitch changes a lot of this, but you're scared of the fact that you're putting this much on a guy who we haven't seen since Joel Embiid. What did he do last year? I remember it was very dirty, but it was his ankle,
he
right?
On the floor and
grabbed at him, yeah,
and pulled him down, yeah.
Well, the basketball gods got to Embiid. Speedy recovery, by the way. But he'll change a lot of that. So it's why I'm still keeping the confidence about the Knicks, is because without Hartenstein coming back, sorry guys, thank you for him. You needed Mitch alongside Karl Anthony Towns. It's why making the trade for Karl Anthony Towns made so much sense as well. Because yes, I just said he's not the rim protector. He is a huge body that without, was it supposed to be Julius Randle down there doing it all? Like, you needed to make that trade. It works, and I think for anybody concerned about Cat playing with Mitch together, Mitch does so much offensively. Like, he's so often in the action in the pick and roll game that I don't have concern of him clogging the paint. He's not a guy that just sits down there. And he just played with a big. But Cat just played with a big. And Mitch at times was on the floor with Hartenstein. So I don't have fear that won't work. I'm just excited to see how it gels when it does. Again, it might take some time. It might look bumpy. It might not happen in game 1, 2, or 3. But I do still believe that it will happen. And that is ultimately why I've kept my confidence on this team being a contender.
And one of the things in basketball generally when we're trying to grade people is what's the flashy plays that like actually matter versus don't matter. And I think blocks are like the number one thing of that, right? So everyone thinks like, oh, this guy leads the league in blocks. He must be a great defender. Like not always, right? That's not always a one-to-one, comparison. Same thing with somebody who gets a lot of steals. Like just because you like are an upper, top five guy in steals doesn't necessarily mean you're a good perimeter defender. It's kind of like oh shoot, I was about to say. Oh yeah, in football, when you have a great cornerback, it's not always indicative of them having a lot of interceptions. I think blocks are very similar to that. It's like you don't need to block a lot of shots to be a good interior defender. And Mitch does block a lot of shots. Like Hartenstein blocks a decent amount of shots. Like that's not what makes them great interior. It's altering shots. It's making people choose not to shoot around them. And that's what the Knicks don't have right now. No one's afraid of Cat, even though he does block shots. Like Cat gets blocks, Precious gets blocks, but they're not good interior defenders because they're not inducing fear in anyone driving to the hoop. They're not altering shots when they're not blocking them, and that's the big thing for me. So same thing with Mitch on the offensive side. Oh, he's bad on offense. Like whatever. What? Because he drops a pass every once in a while. Like yeah, he gets passes at his kneecaps and he doesn't catch every single one. It makes him look really crappy on offense sometimes. I think he's good on offense.
I agree, Pete.
He's a guy who you can actually give the ball to at the elbow, and he won't make a ridiculous decision. Like he'll do a decent passing job. He will roll like a monster and finish strong at the hoop. He will offensive rebound his ass off and completely change the math of a series. So this idea that he's like an albatross on offense, I just don't subscribe to that at all. And you just said it perfectly. Like Cat played next to Rudy. So this is going to make sense to me a lot. And the fact that this depth changes a lot if you're starting Mitchell Robinson, we're talking about Josh Hart and Deuce McBride now off the bench. Like that's a huge thing. And like Josh Hart's still going to play 35 minutes a game. Like that's all good. He's still going to be out there like crazy. But the fact that he's coming off the bench and running with Miles McBride and Jalen Brunson could come in with more gusto after he takes a little breather, like that all matters so much to me. And it's something that like is the stats aren't going to show it. It's not going to be in Mitch's blocks and steals per game. It's going to be in how he affects the people around him. Just like when Brunson's playing better, he is letting the other guys eat more. When Mitch is playing good, all the other defenders look good, and that to me is the big difference.
Yeah, it's a lot like a pitching rotation, Pete. Whether it's the starters or the bullpen, when a guy goes down, it's not just that his one spot. It's that everyone is now slotted up a spot, and their role becomes that much more important, and they're thrust into a position that maybe they're not comfortable with, or they're just not the guy for. Like right now, the Mets might be down 2 starters. Mm-hmm. When you go from Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes being your 4 and 5, you go, all right, we can probably deal with that. If they're their 2 and 3 or they're 3 and 4, and your bullpen and your depth goes from Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill to now that guy is like your everyday 5th starter, that's a way different role and a way different set of expectations. When you have, Precious Achiuwa as your only interior defensive depth, and he's not the best at it as is, it's a huge difference when you have Mitch and then Precious comes in as more of a 12-minute a guy off the bench, tons of energy, all that stuff. So those guys all being slotted up, it makes a ton of difference. And I'll keep going back to it, man. That 8-man rotation makes so much sense to me. And if Mikal Bridges gets unlocked, if Mikal Bridges realizes who he is, I think that they compete with any of these teams. I really believe that.
So there are the concerns. They're real concerns. Right?
They're there.
All the things that I said, I believe in.
Can I say too, like, again, I'm Bill Simmonsing it back to my team. The number 1 seed in the West, they're 46-11 right now. They've played a large majority of the season without Chet or without Hartenstein or without Caruso or whoever. And yet they've overcome that to become this. And I sit here with you, Pete, and I'll tell you, I have major concerns over Oklahoma City at times. I watch them play, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, like the half-court offense, the non-SGA stuff, who's going to initiate the offense if it's not SGA? What happens when he gets doubled? Can we get consistent buckets? That's a 46-11 team over there with insane talent everywhere and seemingly culture and everyone aligned and all these things that you can point to as positives. But you said it. There's probably one team who you can say doesn't have real concerns, and it's Boston. If you want to say Denver, fine. But I think as far as just this year, only Boston can really say that. So every single team, Knicks fans, you're not alone in thinking your team has concerns and holes. All of them do. There's some variance there this year. There's going to be 6 teams, I think, that really, truly compete, and maybe even a couple more, because if we go through the West, I'm getting a little nervous about a couple other teams. So they're there, man. There's teams that have holes. There's teams that are going to, give you problems from the bottom, but every team has it. It's not just you as Knicks fans feeling this. It's not just the Knicks going through this. Pretty much every team, and I'll include Cleveland as a team who's going to have concerns because they haven't done it in the playoffs yet. People aren't going to completely take them seriously just yet. They have to prove it to everybody. So Oklahoma City, Denver, Lakers, Boston, but not Boston, Milwaukee, the Knicks, everybody, anyone you can consider a contender, probably not named Boston, has these concerns going on.
They're all in the same boat. And Brian Windhorst said it on ESPN earlier this week. I'm sure it bugged you, Cody. He said, no one takes the Thunder seriously. Huh. No one takes the Oklahoma City Thunder seriously in the league? That's what we're going with, Windy? And Windy doesn't just say stuff. So if he's saying it, he's hearing it, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's 100% true across the board, but if he's saying it, he's hearing it.
They've got a lot to prove too.
He's very deliberate about what he says, Brian Windhorst. But that should tell you everything you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not taking the Oklahoma City Thunder seriously, who are you taking serious? You're taking just the Boston Celtics serious. That's it. Because everyone else hasn't done it. Everyone else is in the same exact boat where you have a team that's pretty good or great, and you have to just do it in the playoffs now, right? And that doesn't mean the regular season doesn't matter, because obviously all this seeding stuff is going to play a huge role this year specifically. For example, does Denver want to play the Lakers in the first round, or do they want to play the Clippers in the first round? Well, if they get 2 or 3, they don't have to play the Lakers in round 1, most likely, right? But if they drop down to 4, they're probably playing in Los Angeles in round 1. You don't want that. The Lakers don't want that, right? So this all matters. So what I say to it is welcome to NBA contendership. This is what it's like, Knicks fans. We've been longing for this truth for our entire lives. To be back-to-back second rounds, third in the East, with a realistic chance to make noise in the playoffs. Welcome to the NBA. This is what it is. You think people are out there on national NBA podcasts right now saying the Grizzlies are ready to make a championship run? No. They're ready for the Grizzlies to lose in the playoffs. They're ready for Houston to come up short because they're too young. They're ready for the Lakers to run out of steam. They're ready for Jokic to not have enough help. It's everybody. The Knicks aren't different. They're the same as who we thought they were. They're the third best team in the East. That's where we are. So I digress.
It's 100% accurate, man.
I digress for now. I digress. Cody, Subway Sports Talk. We're not done yet. But socials, Subway Sports Talk, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, TikTok, YouTube. Subscribe, rate, review. Appreciate you. Got some new ratings on the podcast app. Shout out to Apple Podcast app. Couple new 5 stars. We like that. Add some more if you're listening to this right now. But Cody, before we go, why don't we have a little fun and get some futures out? Because we are officially a month and 2 days away from opening day of baseball season, and we're dusting off the sports books, and we're getting mad at one of them because it's time to look at futures for the MLB. So Cody O'Connor, do you want to do the honors of calling this sports book out, or do you want me to do the honors?
Pete, I think we're going to go back and forth a little bit here because both of us mentioned it on the podcast, what Vientos' home run total was and how appalled we were at this number.
Yeah.
We saw 35 plus at minus 115 on DraftKings.
Ugh.
And said, what the hell? And both Mets fans, both would love nothing more than to see Vientos smack 40 homers. But the realistic fans we're like, there's no way in hell that 35 should be this guy's number after 3/4 of a season and an awesome playoff run. But come on. So we did a little digging today, didn't we, Pete?
We certainly did.
We did a little research, and this is I'm not coming up with the term, but this is your alert. Maybe you can help me out. It's your announcement. I can't think of the word, but whatever.
What? Your warning?
Yeah, it's like a warning. PSA.
Yeah, there you go. This is your PSA.
shop your lines if you can. If you're somebody with multiple books, if you gamble pretty often, you should probably have more than one book. But if you don't, there's a reason to open up a second one. And that reason is Mark Vientos' home run total on FanDuel is way different than what it is on DraftKings, isn't it? Pete,
It's
what's his
awfully
total on FanDuel?
Mark Vientos' total on FanDuel, and just for reference, you said his total on DraftKings is minus 115 at 35 plus.
That is correct.
At minus 105 on FanDuel, it's 28.5.
Oh, you DraftKings. You thought you could get one over on us, didn't you?
They really thought they were slick, Cody, because guess what? You said it to me on this podcast. I repeated it on this podcast again. I repeated it on TOL and Friends on Thursday
I
nights.
thought
on
you might have
Uptown
gotten
Sports
it onto
TV.
that one too. I thought I heard that.
And everybody's flabbergasted. Everybody's guessing. I'm making them guess the line. I'm saying, what do you think Mark Vientos' line is? Oh, 26.5, 27.5, 28.5. I said, so you thought. I was once dumb too. It's 35. And here I am. We were dumb, Cody, because it's not 35. DraftKings is playing us right now.
They're playing you for a fool. So if you're looking, hey, MLB is not far away. I want to get my futures in. I know I love doing it before seasons start. Maybe you should shop because 29 and 35 are entirely different numbers. Pete, I said it before. That's literally the month of September. And that's a good month in September is 6 home runs. That's a massive difference in what you're getting. I got Francisco Alvarez up, Pete. Yeah. We thought it was going to be 23, 24 based on what we saw on DraftKings. I thought it was 21.5 last year, and he didn't reach 20. How could the number have increased so much? It hasn't. DraftKings tried to get us, but we wouldn't let them. 19.5 on FanDuel. Makes way more sense. Intrigues me way too much. I actually wish I never saw this, Pete. I'm afraid of what I'm going to do with a 19.5 home run total line at minus 105. That's the number it should be, though. At 25, I'm like, what the hell?
And there's example after example after example about this. Like Lawrence Butler, who's an up-and-coming star in this league, perhaps. Minus 230 for 25 plus on DraftKings. His line on FanDuel, 23.5, minus 110. What is happening? And let's just say this to be as fair as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. After dragging the book that I use most, at least I'll say that. Dragging DraftKings through the mud right here. They don't have unders available yet. Okay, so they don't have that available just yet. They only have overs, and you can parlay them. So yeah, maybe they juice the odds a little bit just to get some action and etc. But this is ridiculous. We're talking like a difference of minus 100 to minus 230 for a worse line. Like, it's insane. So again, if you're looking at futures, shop around, because Cody and I have now found some that we do like, because we liked nothing on DraftKings because the lines were stupid. So now we have found some that we do like. So Cody, why don't we end this on a positive and help our friends of Subway Sports Talk make some money? Do you want to hit us with one player? Do you want me to go first?
I'll go. I got it up and ready. And I'll be honest, there's some heart to this because, well, to be quite frank, Pete, I've wanted this guy to be a Met since he was a National. It was way beyond the Yankees. It was once he became known that he was available and Steve Cohen had the pockets to do it. I've loved him since he was there. I thought he was the best hitter in baseball. I still think that. His total at 32.5 is intriguing to me for his home runs, Mr. Juan Soto. And I know what some people are thinking. There's two things. One, he doesn't have the short porch in right field, right? So they think that number is going to decrease. He doesn't have that short porch, but Juan Soto is an all fields hitter, and we know that. What he does have in left center is a shorter left center field porch, which we saw him go to in Port St. Lucie, but in his first at bat in spring training. He loves that left center porch, and the Mets have a shorter one than the Yankees did. So I think he makes up some of those home runs there. You're saying he doesn't have Judge to bat behind him. I get that. I understand that. I'm certain he saw some more fastballs than he would have without Judge there. It's fair. He does have Francisco Lindor in front of him, and if Francisco Lindor is on base, you can't really start games off or really have late game situations where you're just putting a second guy on base, especially because Mark Vientos is set to hit 35 plus home runs. So I am going to take this number. Maybe a little bit of heart. I think there's some head there. Juan Soto, over 32.5. How can I not? It's minus 115. It'll be fun to root for, so I'm going to do it.
And last year, this might make you feel even better, Cody. Juan
41?
Soto had 20 home runs at home
Okay.
and 21 home runs on the road.
Hmm.
So little short porch, who cares? It's Juan
And
Soto.
he's got unbelievable numbers at Citi Field. That doesn't really mean the most, but he does have them.
I like it. I like it a lot. And I do think, again, looking at DraftKings, we were like, damn, we got to take, minus 135 for 35 plus for Juan Soto. Actually, no, you can get 32.5 for minus 110 or whatever you said it was. So I could not agree more. So I'll go with one more. I'm going to keep it in New York, and we're going to go with Cody Bellinger. Because I was really, truly looking for a Jazz Chisholm number, if I'm being honest, but Jazz Chisholm is not on FanDuel right now, so we'll look as we get closer to the season. But on DraftKings, Jazz Chisholm is minus 200 to hit 25 plus home runs, and he's never done that in his career. That's crazy, but we'll see where the FanDuel line is when that comes out. I'm going to go, however, with Cody Bellinger. Do you know where Cody Bellinger sits at?
I do. I'm looking at it.
Okay, so you know where he's at on FanDuel.
Yes, 20.5 on FanDuel.
Good. So on DraftKings, Cody Bellinger is even worse than that, and now I lost his name here.
Let's see if I can find you. Were you looking at 20 plus for him?
Cody Bellinger is 25 plus is plus 130, which I do kind of like, if I'm being honest.
20 plus is minus 220. So just that one extra home run gets you to minus 110.
Yeah, so 20 plus is minus 220, but on FanDuel, he is 20.5 at minus 110. So that's fantastic, and I'm taking it. Cody Bellinger is a guy who has up and down, and I've definitely crapped on him on recent podcasts for being pretty inconsistent over his career. But last year, 18 home runs. The year before that, 26 home runs. And that was in Chicago, which is not friendly. So he does get the benefit of playing in New York and being a lefty and taking advantage of that short porch. I think he's over 20 home runs with ease this year. He only played 130 games last year and had 18. He had 130 games and hit 26 2 years ago. So Cody Bellinger over 20.5. That's going to be my home run bet for the future.
I kept scrolling, so I wanted to just add one. Bryce Harper's at 27.5, Pete, minus 110.
Well,
and to me, it feels like this is almost strictly a health bet.
Has to be.
And he's coming into the year healthy. I don't know of any concerns with him coming into the year. He's been playing first base. I think he's staying there unless I don't know something. But sometimes when you look at futures, that's part of the line. I really believe that. I think especially in the NFL where I take a lot more. But if you're looking at it and you're going, it's just based on his health, I think sometimes you just got to let that rip. So 27.5 for Bryce Harper feels very intriguing. Not something I want to take. I don't want to be watching Bryce Harper mash home runs against the Mets all year, but that's what he does. So I might as well get something out of it.
He hit 30 last year.
And he wasn't healthy all year, correct? He started the season on IL?
He played 145 last year, but I do believe he was dealing with some sort of thing that was not allowing him to be at full strength for a little while. So he had 30, 21 in only 126 games, and then only 18 in 99 games, but then 35 in 140 games. So
it's a health bet.
If he plays his standard amount, you have to imagine he goes to 30. So I like that. Only 32
And Philly's got a short porch in right field, too. People don't realize, but that's quite the short porch in right.
And only 32 years old, Bryce Harper. That's
damn.
crazy.
I wish he was 40.
Yeah, me too. Get him out of here. That's it.
He's so good.
Cody O'Connor. We'll talk more baseball as time moves on, but a lot of Knicks today. And if we're being honest about the New York Knicks, they play Philadelphia on Wednesday night, and I'm pretty sure Embiid and Paul George are announced out. So that'll really, really send Knicks fans into a tizzy when they somehow lose that game because Tyrese Maxey drops 40.
Yeah, that'll
Grimes
be it.
hits like 7 threes.
Hey, can I ask one last question before we go? Yep. It is a Mets question, but I am very curious about what you think about this. The fact that they're free agents, right? Last year, they go on this great run, NLCS, best team in baseball since June. And yet they had a lot of free agents going into the offseason, and very few of them, if any, outside of really Severino, got much interest from the rest of the league. And I just want to, I get it. Quintana's older, JD Martinez older, Jose Iglesias older. To some extent, I get that. But I wonder why teams aren't taking a flyer on some of these guys, why some of them aren't signed. Is that just the MLB as it is with free agency? I'm curious what your thoughts are on a team that did find so much success, had so many integral parts leave in free agency, and yet so many of them either remain unsigned or their market, like Pete Alonso, was like strictly the Mets, it seemed. So I just wonder what you think about that.
Well, for one, Scott Boras is the agent of more than one of those people. Jose Iglesias kind of standing out right now. Jose Iglesias wants to be paid for multiple years. And I get that because he felt disrespected by baseball for a few years there and then played really good last year and probably deserves to be, a couple years signee right now. The Mets don't want to do it. These guys might return. I think they're coming back. Quintana's still out there. Go get him. They might well just go do it. I mean, Jose Iglesias seems like it's not going to happen, but also if he don't get multiple years from somebody else, he ain't signing a 1 year with the Mets. I think he might. So it's a mixture of old players and a mixture of not understanding their own market. I won't throw JD Martinez into that because I think he's at a different point in his career. He was hardly a factor in the Mets surge later in the year. Like he was fine as a DH. He wasn't even really good, to be honest. So that makes sense to me. Sevy got one of the biggest contracts in Oakland Athletic history, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, Quintana and Iglesias, how are they not getting any love? It's just age to me and not understanding your own market. I think that's what it comes down to. The baseball free agency market is bizarre right now. Like Bregman sat on the bench not on the bench, but on the sideline of free agency for a long time and finally got a 3-year deal. And even that is like, who else was giving him that? Who was Boston bidding against? I think Boston at the end of the day said, we want this guy and kind of need this guy right now. Screw it. Let's go for it. But who are they bidding against? Teams are too set in their spending and too set in what they have that they're not fringe adding for money. And that's for years, I should say. Everyone's trying to kick it down the aisle a little bit. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I don't disagree with any of it. I just kind of find it curious. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, there you go. I think Iglesias might be back. But then again, I do think the Mets want to commit at some point this year, and maybe it's the end of the year, to Acuna and Mauricio.
I think that plays a big part for him, for Iglesias, yeah.
If he's playing decent, like you're not turning the page. And you're not getting 330 again at Jose Iglesias. I'm sorry. Like, that's an aberration.
No, I agree. I also think, though, with him, it's like, well, look at what he was as a locker room guy. But I agree with the fact that Boras is his guy, and he probably is asking for too much. I've already made my thoughts on Boras clear, but if you didn't listen, I think he's a clown. I think he's done an awful job. I don't count what he did for Juan Soto because you or I could do that. Like, I envision that just he's like going up to the Yankees, and he's like, hey, the Mets went to 630, and they're like, geez, 630? And he goes, but it's Juan Soto. He's really good. And they're like, all right, 640. And then he went back to the Mets, and he's like, they went up to 640. And he goes, geez, 640? And he's like, oh, well, it's Juan Soto. All right, he is really good. All right, we'll do 650. And then they just went up to 765. Like, I don't think Scott Boras did anything in that. So yeah, I think he's kind of a clown.
Agreed. His time is past, bro. None of the teams want to deal with him either. That's the big problem.
They're putting their foot down. Not just David Stearns with the Alonso stuff, but a lot of guys are like, we're just going to hold you out because there's no market. We're not competing against anyone.
Jordan Montgomery like Clayton Kershaw, bro. Like, what are we doing?
Yep.
Like, come on.
He's lucky it worked out for Blake Snell that he bounced back because he almost screwed that guy pretty bad too. So, and there's multiple cases of that.
Correct. Screw Scott Boras. One thing all baseball fans can agree on. That's it. All right, Cody O'Connor, Subway Sports Talk. That's all we got. We got more stuff coming. I got T.O. Al and Friends, 8 p.m. Thursday night on Uptown Sports TV on YouTube. It's also live on Twitter, Subway Sports Talk Twitter as well. Knicks have Philly, Memphis, Miami, Golden State, Lakers, Clippers the next week and a half. Not a lot of easy games there, Cody.
Go 5-1, and everyone will still be worried about how they lost to Boston.
Ain't that the truth?
I don't know if 5-1 adds up. It seemed close to 6 games.
It was close enough. All right, Subway Sports Talk, Cody O'Connor, thank you as always. And shouts to our boy Shenny Shen. He got his gift for winning our picks pool this year. Shout out to Shen. He does deserve it. Yeah.
Welcome, Mark Shen, to the list alongside myself, Michael Jordan, Pete Rose, Charles Barkley, Phil Mickelson, just the all-time great gamblers. Mark Shen, welcome to the list, buddy. Congrats.
All right, that's all we got. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.